You're tuned in to RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
4 seconds left. In front. Happy moment. The Tampa Bay Lightning have won the first Stanley Cup. And the Tampa Bay Lightning have won the Stanley Cup. Lightning strikes twice. The Tampa Bay Lightning win their second straight Stanley Cup.
Welcome in, everybody, to RBLR Lightning. My name's Jake Ricker. Alongside me today, we have Matt. Matt, welcome back. I'm excited to talk some Lightning hockey with you. We got a lot more games to talk about again as everything is ramped up right now around the NHL. How you doing?
I'm well. Thanks for having me back for a second time. I was just about ready to hit the panic button, but I was excited. I was satisfied to see the results we had for the last couple of days. But keep your hand off that panic button for the time being. I think we're coming into our home stretch here, and I think we're going to be playing some good hockey the rest of the way.
I think a lot of people shared your sentiment and were very ready to hit that panic button, but luckily the Lightning seemed to have gotten their feet back underneath them, which we'll get into all of those game recaps in just a little bit. But first, we have some news to talk about. First, McDonough out with an injury. He blocked a shot in the Boston game and is now listed as he's being out indefinitely, which is probably the most annoying kind of injury because we don't know exactly when he's going to be back. Matt, have you heard anything specifically on how long he might be out?
I haven't seen anything. I've heard Cooper say that he's hopeful to be back before the postseason, even maybe a couple of games before then. I know it was a wrist injury, and McDonough, he actually played through a broken hand in the playoffs last year. I think he got it in the New York series. So it must be pretty tough to be able to take him out for, let's say a couple of weeks or so. But we hope that he's going to get back sometime soon because he's a crucial piece on that left side.
And the important thing is, though, I mean, obviously, I'm sure everybody would agree with me here. We want to have him 110% when he comes back. So it's going to suck to lose him for a long period of time. But if it was up to me, I say leave him out and get him ready to go fully for the playoffs. Because as you mentioned, he's going to be an important piece that we need moving into the playoffs. And this is a chance for Cal Foote to really step up and take that role. A lot of people have been wondering, we've been talking about it all season so far this year on this podcast. Can Cal Foote step up and go to that next level? And hopefully he can do that. But Matt, what do you think about Cal Foote step up into that role that McDonough has left right now?
Well, yeah, Cooper said it best. He said he played a phenomenal game. He played upwards of 16 minutes in that New York game. And I'm a big Cal Foote homer this season, at least. He reminds me a lot of Chernak from a couple of years ago, where you can tell he's finally coming into his own. He's still not, top 4 defenseman quality or anything like that, but he's making less mistakes. He's been a little bit more physical, taking less gambles as well. And he knows his place on the ice. Not the most fleet of foot, but he's looking more and more comfortable and more at home each game he does play, especially when Coach Cooper says something like that as well. It's going to boost his confidence. And I'm excited to see. And I agree with you saying not keep him out, but we'd rather have McDonough be healthy and ready for a long playoff run or hopeful for one. So, yeah, I think the way that Bogosian and Foote have been playing really gives us solace and gives us confidence with these two lower level defensemen.
And just real quick before we get into the game recaps from this week, just some other NHL news. Unfortunately, some sad news. The Ottawa Senators owner did pass away, so our condolences to his family and the organization. Always, a terrible thing to hear, but our condolences to his family. Let's go ahead and get into these game recaps, though, and talk about what we've seen from the Lightning, starting with the game last week against Carolina, who the Lightning are actually playing tonight as of this recording. Hopefully by the time you're listening to this, it was a win by that point, but we'll have to wait and see for us. But last week against Carolina, the Lightning would ultimately lose this game by a score of 3-2. It was a close game throughout the whole one, but Carolina ultimately able to get the edge. Matt, your thoughts on this game?
I had high not high hopes going into it. I know Carolina's a really, really good team. They were kind of coming off of a slump. I know I was saying in the previous show, but overall, I think we played Carolina really well. I think they play us even better. They're a very, very complete team. They played great on the transition. So I knew it was going to be a good game. I knew it was going to be a close game, but I think this is one that it was kind of a test of our mettle. Really kind of, gave us a benchmark of how we really should get back to playing. It was nice seeing a new face, Nick Paul, score a goal. The lone 5-on-5 goal, I believe it was, but unfortunately we came up short. But again, it's against a great Carolina team.
Nick Paul has looked fantastic, I feel like, throughout these last couple of games. Now he's starting to get his feet under him with this new team. And he got the goal, as you mentioned. Also, it was a fantastic celebration he had, too, which is always a fun thing to see, I think, for those new guys. But he seems like he's fitting in very nicely. They're still adjusting on the penalty kill with some of these new guys, and we saw how important Joseph was to that penalty kill. Carolina Hurricanes went 2 for 4 on the power play, which honestly is ultimately what hurt the Lightning in this game, because, as I mentioned, they played them close throughout the whole thing, but those power play goals did not help, and ultimately helped give Carolina the win in this game. So that was something to be concerned of. But as we'll get into a little bit later, the penalty kill, I think, did get better as the week went on. But what are your thoughts, though, Matt, on Paul and some of the new guys, even Hagel as well, who's been on the penalty kill, and them adjusting in their new roles here?
It looks like Paul has fit right in, honestly. Like, I think Hagel is obviously the better player, just overall, but I think Paul has slotted in really nicely so far, especially on the penalty kill. I know in that Carolina game, that was our Achilles heel, that penalty kill, but it's going to take time to develop that chemistry. But as we've seen through some of the later games this week, that penalty kill is really, really shored up. Paul looking really comfortable on it. I'm still not sure about Hagel, how he's looked, but as far as I know, I don't think he's been a minus on the penalty kill at least. So I think they're going to fit right in. Again, Paul, he's looked fantastic so far, and Hagel as well.
Yeah, I really liked what I've seen from them, and I think with more time, they'll get even better as well. But we also had some interesting antics going on at the end of this game, too, that I want to talk about quickly, is that the Lightning kind of hung around for a little bit at the end of this game. They had pulled the goaltender late in the game, as they had pulled within one after Alex Killorn's goal. And they were trying to push for one last goal, maybe hopefully tie it up. And then Kucherov ultimately gets called for an interference penalty after running into one of the Carolina players, which I do think was an interference penalty. I know a lot of Bolts fans were not quite sure about it when it first happened, but Kuch clearly frustrated and upset with himself and how he's been playing recently, but it led to, kind of some pushing and shoving and some talking after the game, which Kane's Twitter had some fun with after that. And I'm sure the Lightning are going to remember that for the game tonight. I'm sure they're going to be ready to play. But Matt, what about your thoughts on Nikita Kucherov so far? Because you could tell in this game, he took a couple of penalties, wasn't able to get on the score sheet. He was clearly frustrated with the way things have been going for him.
He is so easily visibly frustrated. I think it's more apparent than probably any other player in the league. And there's some players that can feed off of their anger with themselves or other teams. And I don't think he's one of them. I think he plays best when he is calm, when he's just dialed in. I hate seeing an angry Cooch, which it sucks because it happens so easily. I'm not sure what Sebastian Aho did to really get under his skin, but you can tell something's been boiling over, ready to boil over with Kucherov. I hope he can calm himself down, but that Hurricanes Twitter, they really did have a field day with us. I think they said something like, that we were taking a little bit to get off the ice, and they were like, oh, they wanted to join in on the storm surge. I thought that was hilarious. But yeah, and an angry Kucherov is not the one that I want to see. It's reminding me almost of the Columbus Cooch, which is the last thing we want to see.
Yeah, no, not at all. Hopefully he can get things going, though, because he's one of the best players around in the NHL. I mean, remember when he had that 128-point season, but it just seems like he's not himself right now. Moving on, though, the next game the Lightning had was against the Boston Bruins. It was a big game at the time because things have gotten a lot tighter in the Atlantic Division, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But this game basically was for the Lightning to stay in third place or Boston to overtake them and move the Lightning back down to the wild card. And it was another close, tightly contested game, but the Lightning ultimately fall to the Boston Bruins by a score to 3-2. And the Lightning had the lead multiple times in this game. Boston kept on coming to tie it back. At the end of the day, it's David Pastrnak who gets a hat trick and pushes the Bruins over the top, giving them the victory. A frustrating game for sure, Matt.
It's such a complicated feeling when like your fantasy team does well. Like, you know, I needed a David Pastrnak hat trick, but not at the Bolts' expense. You know, it definitely was a frustrating game, and I think I'm not alone when I say that the Bruins are one of my least favorite teams, especially when the standings are this compact and close how they are. It was a gripping game, and it was an unfortunate way to lose on a, you know, Pasta hat trick, but it was great to see Brandon Hagel finally getting on the Bolts score sheet with a beautiful shorthanded goal with a great pass from Andre Palat. Those two were workhorses on that penalty kill. Nice for Palat as well. I think that's a good confidence booster for him, even if he's not scoring. I think he's more of a goal scorer than a setup man, you know, from his time with the team, I'd say. But again, it was a beautiful assist on that goal. Stamkos and Point and Kucherov hopping up on the score sheet as well. They all needed that, but again, an unfortunate way to lose. But hopefully we can regain some ground in the standings against them. I know Toronto and Boston are playing tonight, so at least hopefully we have an opportunity to at least eclipse one of them. Or I think we are ahead of. Yeah, we're 1 point ahead of both of them.
We are currently ahead of them, and all games played are even right now. So. You know, it's going to come down to the wire in the Atlantic Division, but you're absolutely right. Brandon Hagel was fantastic in this game. And I remember Dave Michigan mentioned this on the broadcast, is that Brandon Hagel is actually really good against the Boston Bruins. I think he has 4 career points before that goal. Or not 4 career, but 4 points this season against the Boston Bruins, if I remember the stat correctly. So he, for whatever reason, he's had some success against the Boston Bruins, and he continued that in this game. And that was his first career shorthanded goal as well. So a pretty cool accomplishment there. And then Braden Point also tonight played in his 400th game as a member of the Lightning in his NHL career. So a pretty cool accomplishment there as well. Good for Braden Point, continuing to solidify himself as a big part of this Lightning organization. And then Steven Stamkos also scored a goal tonight, getting him off. He was in a little bit of a slump as well. Obviously, Stamkos had his Big Mac before this game and was able to put one in the back of the net. For anybody that doesn't get that reference, Stamkos did a little video with the NHL, and he mentioned how he would eat a Big Mac after he would be in a scoring slump. So I remember I had jokingly said in our little group chat that he needs to eat his Big Mac, and clearly he did before this game. But
yeah, I didn't catch that reference, so I'm glad you cleared that up for me.
Yeah, you're probably like, what is he talking about?
Yeah, I was so confused. I thought you were making like a McDonough reference or something.
Well, that's what it was. So if you haven't seen it, if you go on the NHL's Twitter page, you can find it there. They had a chat with Steven Stamkos talking about the 2-peat and going for the 3-peat. And he talked about a lot of really cool things in that video. And one of them was that his scoring slump buster, I think is what he called it, was getting a Big Mac, which was pretty interesting, I thought, as well. So now you know the reference, though, if we ever talk about it. Hopefully we don't have to talk about it again, because that means he'd be in a scoring slump. But I think the one positive out of this, Matt, though, is that it seemed like with these last 2 games, at least, the Lightning were starting to play better. I mean, I know it was frustrating for Lightning fans with the Ultimate losing both these games and then falling to a wild card spot after this loss to Boston, but they started to look better. They started to look like they were slowly getting their game back a little bit, and you could tell, maybe they needed a couple more games to at least get back in this, and I think that was a positive sign after these 2 games. Your thoughts, though?
They look different from that West Coast road trip where they were getting blown out from like multiple goal blowouts. And, I wouldn't actually really call them blowouts, but yeah, multi-goal games where the deficit was multi-goal. They look like they are playing a little bit better, playing actually 60 minutes of hockey. Obviously, they're not going to be perfect 60 minutes, but they look a lot quicker, a lot more complete. And if they're trending that way, I'm hoping to see more complete and dominating games and not being blown out by, huge multi-goal leads. But yeah, it's a little bit calming to know that at least these games are competitive. That even if we are losing by 1 or 2 goals, it's nice to know that at least we're not being blown out again.
Well, let's move on to where Lightning did start to turn around things. Now, unfortunately, it wasn't a 7-1 win or anything that a lot of Lightning fans were hoping for. But the Lightning taking on the Detroit Red Wings on an early 12:30 start. They ultimately, though, do get the win by a final score of 2-1 in overtime. And the Lightning getting back in that win column. Steven Stamkos getting himself back on the board once again. And then Braden Point, the ultimate OT hero. I don't know what it is, Matt, about Braden Point, but that man just knows what to do in overtime. And the Lightning getting a big win in this game. Their power play actually went 2 for 3 in this game. So round of applause to the power play, finally getting something done. We'll get into a little more of the power play later because I have a lot to talk about when it comes to them. But the Bolts actually, I thought, played a really good game overall. I mean, they had 36 shots on goal, 64% in the faceoff circle, 2 for 3, as I mentioned, on the power play. They did take a lot of penalties again as they went. Luckily, though, the penalty kill did very good job going 5 for 5. And, it was a little worrisome when Detroit ended up getting the first goal about halfway through the third period, but the Lightning got big stars, were able to score when it mattered most and got the job done. They kind of got back to that old way they were at the beginning of the season, the Tampa Bay find-a-ways, where they found a way to come on with the win here.
Yeah, with this Detroit game, I had mixed emotions about. It's a little weird to only get 2 by a goalie who the next night or 2 nights later let in 11 goals. It's a little weird, but again, you're not going to win every single game by a score of 7-0 or whatever. So we're going to take the win, whatever the score it is. So yeah, it is nice to see the power play as well getting back on track, even if it did take them a couple of whacks as well. I liked them, the power play 1, keeping the puck down low. I think that was the way that they scored that first power play goal. It was Kucherov to Point to Stamkos, and they kept it right in front of the goalie, where Detroit is notoriously weak in front of their net. They don't give their goaltenders a lot of defensive support there, so it was nice for them to adjust that way. And actually just having the power play score, it's just a huge difference. So again, I didn't think they played great and whatever. Brian Elliott, I thought he was fantastic, even though he did have that one little squeaker get through, stopping 26 of 27 shots. Bolts were good in the face-off circle as well. They went 64% to Detroit's 36%, which is a huge change from earlier in the season. I'm all for that.
Let's talk about Brian Elliott. He has been extremely good for the Lightning this season. He overall, you mentioned in this game, stopping 26 of 27 shots. But I've just been so impressed with the way he's played. I know we had kind of talked about at the beginning of this offseason that, we needed a little bit of an upgrade at backup. Curtis Acklin was decent, but you could tell that they needed a little bit of help. I think Brian Elliott really stepped up into that role. So it's been fantastic to see him thrive down here in Tampa Bay. I don't know what it is, if it's just he's playing in front of a better team, but he has done excellent. And I'm glad he ended up getting the win here because I knew, the boys needed to get a win for him and how well he's played. I mean, he stopped some impressive shots, too, that Detroit had. They had some great opportunities, and Elliott came up big.
I forget which game it was. It was a couple of weeks ago, but he stopped like 44 shots or something. It was just an absolute spectacular game from Elliott, but the guys couldn't do anything to help him out. So it's nice to see him finally get rewarded, and he's definitely an answer to a lot of our prayers. Vasilevsky's been so stable, very healthy, and in my eyes, still the best goaltender in the world. So really comforting to see that we have somebody who we could trust in a backup role, or even if, God forbid, Vasilevsky goes down with an injury or something, somebody we can trust to start and win games for us. Past that, who knows? But he's been a big answer to a lot of our, not so urgent prayers, but still, a solid backup is something we've been asking for what it seems like 5-6 years now, or even longer.
And we're going to continue to need him as well because we still have 3 back-to-backs at least left in this final month of hockey as we approach this last little run here. And I may need to play more because the Lightning do stretch where they have 2 days off. It's always at least 1 day off, and then they're playing another game. So we might need even more of Brian Elliott, and he's come through so far this season. So good for him to get a win here, and good for the Lightning to get back in that win column. And luckily, the good times would keep on rolling this time in a much bigger way, as the Lightning would beat the Islanders 4-1 in their next game, and a hot Islanders team as well. The Islanders were playing pretty well overall, trying to get back in a spot where because they had a really rough start to the season after that long 13 game road trip. But they would run into the 2-time defending Stanley Cup champion Tampa Bay Lightning, and the power play 1 for 4 in this game. Lightning were 46% in the faceoff circle. Penalty kill comes through huge again as they force the Islanders to go 0 for 3. Alex Killorn had a goal in this game, which put him at 50 points, which is improve year after year. No signs of him slowing down, which is funny. He's always the guy that name comes up when it comes to the trade deadline. A lot of people were ready to move on for him, but he has continued to dominate year after year. So impressive stuff for him. And then the Lightning really dominated the second and third period in this game. Ross Colton, Mikhail Sergachev, and Victor Hedman, all the rest of the Lightning players getting on the board and scoring a goal for the Bolts. But an overall very good win for the Lightning to really shut down the Islanders and get back-to-back wins.
Yeah, congrats to Alex Killorn matching or eclipsing a career best. Good for him. And yeah, it is always funny. He is always often the name that comes up talking about trades and whatever else. But he's said that he wants to retire here. He'll do whatever it takes to keep playing in Tampa. I don't know if that counts on taking discounts, whatever else when his next contract comes up. That's a different story for a different day. But yeah, the rest of this game I was super, super happy with. I'm not sure what it is about the Islanders, but it feels like they always bring the best out of this team, especially in a time where they really need to play their best hockey. The Islanders, they've been really good recently as well, coming off of a pretty anemic start. They're gunning for a playoff spot. It's rather unlikely now, but this was a chippy game off the start as well. That Maroon and Ross Johnston fight, that was kind of meh. Kind of a hug fest, whatever. But tensions were up early in the game, and they kind of settled down a little bit. Cooch, he didn't seem as angry as games passed as well. I think did he show up on the score sheet at all somewhere?
I have to double check myself here. I don't remember if he did off the top of my head.
Yeah. What? Besides that, I think everybody, the whole team played really well. There's not a whole lot that I can criticize at all here, but. Cal Foote, I think he had a really fantastic game, stepping up a lot in a defensive time of need. This is the game that Cooper said he played fantastic in. It's really difficult for me to pick out a lot of any bad things about this game. There were a couple of 2-on-1 and odd man rushes early in the game, but I think as the game progressed, the Bolts really tightened everything down and played playoff style, championship style hockey against a team that really loves to give them a run for their money.
Kucherov did have an assist in this game, as I finally got the stats pulled back up. But yeah, good for Kucherov to get back on that score sheet. Hopefully that continues to roll for him. But back-to-back wins for the Lightning. They move back into second place as it sits right now, because Toronto would ultimately lose their game against Montreal. So that was big for them as well. But
did you see the shot differential in that Montreal-Toronto game?
I did not. What was it?
It was something like 48-18 or something just absolutely crazy.
It's the crazy thing about sports, right? Sometimes you got teams that are just playing at the highest level, and then the next thing you know, they're losing to the Montreal Canadiens. You never, heck, even saying that for Detroit, right? Playing a tight, close game against the Lightning, and then you get blown out 11-2 against the Pittsburgh Penguins. It's kind of crazy, but and you're right too about Cal Foote. He did play excellent in this game. I've been impressed with how he has been in these last couple of games. Hopefully that can continue for him. Before we get into the games coming up this week, though, Matt, I want to talk about the power play again because it's been a source of frustration for me, especially, and I know for a lot of Lightning fans. I've been looking at their stats a lot lately. They were really bad at the beginning of this trip. I mentioned they did not score in either of the nights in those first games against Carolina and then against Boston. They did have some success in the next two games, 2 for 3, as I mentioned, against Detroit. But they're still struggling. They're still an obvious issue with them. And one big thing for me is I don't understand why Brandon Hagel has not been given a chance to go on the power play. He did have power play time in Chicago. He had 4 goals and 2 assists when on being on the power play, and he was 66% in his faceoffs. Granted, he only took 3 of them, so 1-2, lost 1, but still, he was able to win a majority of his faceoffs at least. And I think he'd be a real good asset to shake up, especially that second unit. Now you'd have to take somebody off of there. And I mean, maybe Patrick Maroon or Corey Perry would be my 2 ones, because those are kind of similar players that I don't think you need both those guys on there. But I absolutely think Brandon Hagel needs to get a chance on the power play because something has got to change with this power play because it's not working.
I agree with you there. If we were to take anybody off PP2, it would be Maroon. I think Perry, he fits perfectly there. He's a net front kind of guy. To me, Maroon, I love him to death. He's a great player, but I just don't think he really belongs on the power play. And I know he's got a couple of power play goals and assists, to really kind of keep him in that power play. But when you got a new shiny toy like Hagel, who is known to be a goal scorer, not so much of a setup man, but he's got a nose for the net. He's a gritty player, and I think he would fit right in perfectly on a power play that needs a huge adjustment right now. So to me, it is a little silly that Cooper hasn't even decided to toy with the power plays at all, maybe changing up how these lines how each line plays on the power play. I know they've tried to adjust, but it'd be nice to see a new face on it, especially a goal scorer like Hagel himself. So I agree with you there. Otherwise, I wouldn't put a whole lot of stock into the couple of power play goals in the Detroit and New York game, because the Detroit game, one of them was an overtime 4-on-3 man advantage in that power play goal. In the New York game, I mean, that was just Hedman being an absolute tank, being a beast, and just a wicked shot that he plays perfectly. So it's not a power play style goal. So there is some changes that still need to be had.
Yeah, absolutely. But here's the interesting that I'll bring up quickly too as well. The Lightning are currently ranked 17th in the league as it stands right now at 20%. That's the worst they've had since 2015, where they had just a 15.8% success rate. But let me ask you this, Matt. What do you think the Lightning power play percentage was last season?
Last season? Oh, man. I know it was pretty good. I'm going to say 24.6%.
You're close, but not quite. It's actually 22%, which is just 2% higher than what it is right now, which might make you think, okay, well, maybe there isn't that much of an issue with the power play. But here's the big difference. As I mentioned, 17th, 20%. They're ranked 17th in the league right now. Last year, the Lightning were ranked 9th overall. So it seems like power plays just in general in the NHL are better this year. Also, I remember seeing an article recently that scoring is up overall in the NHL as well. And also the year before that, by the way, for the Lightning, they were ranked 5th on the power play at 23.1%. So percentages wise, there's not a huge difference, but they're definitely a lot lower ranked when it is compared to the rest of the NHL, which is interesting to look at and does make you think a little bit.
Mm-hmm. The power play, it's not the most necessary thing to have, especially come playoff time where refs love to swallow their whistles. To me, a strong penalty kill is honestly a more important thing that's going to get you closer to the Stanley Cup. As we saw Montreal they didn't allow a power play goal. They were 30 for 30. It was from sometime from the first round until they played us. So a strong penalty kill will take you most of the way, if not all the way. But so, things do have to change for us to be winning some of these convincing games. But you'd rather have a healthy 5-on-5 scoring ability than a power play. This is just my opinion. But again, we still need to be able to score power play goals. We went 0 for 14, 15 in that West Coast trip. Yeah. You want to at least be in the run for all of them, power play, penalty kill, 5-on-5. So, things need to change, and I would love to see Hagel and maybe even Paul on the power play. I know they got him for a defensive role, but I think he's also looked actually really good in an offensive position.
Absolutely. It could be interesting to see what he's able to do, and why not try it, right? Because obviously there's some issues there. But luckily, as you mentioned, for the Lightning, they do have a very good penalty kill, and that hasn't changed. And I think it'll continue to get better as Hagel and Paul start to really fit in and build some chemistry with the rest of their teammates. But let's look at the games ahead for the Lightning right now. So you've got a lot of home games coming up this month, where the Lightning are going to have 12 total home games, including the one tonight against Carolina, and only 5 games on the road. So finally for them, they get some rest, or they're not in, like 12 different cities in 11 days or something like that. So good for them to be home, and I'm sure that'll give them a little boost to be able to play in front of the fans here at Amalie. But Carolina Hurricanes tonight, and then they're going to be taking on the Chicago Blackhawks, and then it's that's the first half of a back-to-back, where they then face the Montreal Canadiens and then the Toronto Maple Leafs. That'll be the last game before we again record here on the podcast. But interesting schedule coming up with a back-to-back, a big game against Carolina, Chicago, Montreal. Not the best teams in the standings, although Chicago has been playing better as of late, especially after Radish and Kachuk have gotten there, and good for them. Happy to see them succeeding. But then another big game in the Atlantic Division against Toronto. Matt, your thoughts on these games?
This Toronto game is going to be important. The Montreal and Blackhawks games, they're not going to be super, super important. It's not going to be detrimental if we lose them, but we are going to need to gain as much ground as possible and try to, make a push for at least home ice in the playoffs. That's going to be a huge, huge thing. I might be going to the Blackhawks game on the first. I had a buddy invite me. He said he had an extra ticket, so it'll be fun to go to that one.
We need all the Lightning fans we can get in there, because the Chicago fans are going to be out in full force.
Yeah, are there any left?
Right? Seriously.
No, Chicago, Taylor Radish and Kachuk, I've heard their names a lot coming from an unbiased perspective. I watch a lot of game highlights, and I don't know if you guys saw the score from the game last night. Radish, he showed up. He had an assist on the first or second goal, but it was 4-0 against the Sabres, and then it was 4-4, 5-4. Did you see the game-winning goal?
I did, and that was an extremely unlucky bounce for Chicago.
That was brutal.
Yeah, for Chicago. But, I mean, hey, that's the way things go. You've got puck luck going your way or the other way, and that's unfortunate.
Mm-hmm. But again, it's really nice to see Radish showing up on the score sheet, and Kachuk, he's playing that same physical style hitting guys, hard forecheck style. He starting stuff, and they're not as much of a condensed role as they had here in Tampa. So they're going to have a good room to flourish. I'd hope. You want to wish these guys the most success possible.
I think part of you also is like, though, come on, can you guys not succeed so our trade doesn't look that bad overall?
Yes.
But you did. I mean, you knew they were going to score more because they're getting more ice time. They just weren't getting that here in Tampa because we have such a talented roster. That speaks to our depth as well. But they will be fun to see those guys back in here. Hopefully their scoring does not continue when they're playing us. But, that back-to-back coming up, Brian Elliott will definitely get one of those starts as well. And you're right, though, as you mentioned, this is the time where you want to make that distance, and because you're going to have a couple of big division games this whole month of April, and this is the time to get hot, right? Right before the playoffs. This is when you want to get on that good streak and get that momentum ready to go for the playoffs. Let's take a look around the rest of the league and talk about some of those standings quickly before we wrap up this show. Lightning currently, as it sits as of this recording, are sitting in second place in the Atlantic Division. Toronto just 1 point behind. Boston only 1 point as well. As I mentioned earlier, too, everybody in the Atlantic Division, at least Boston, Toronto, the Lightning, and the Panthers are all at 65 games played. So everything very, very close. And honestly, we have no idea who's going to end up playing who, because a lot can change in this next month of April with a lot of games left.
Yeah, these I think we got 18 games remaining. How many did you say we played? 65.
65.
Okay, so yeah, pretty much what everybody's going to be battling for is seeding and home ice advantage, at least in the Atlantic Division. The West, it's all kind of a crapshoot right there. The only guarantees we have are Colorado and Calgary, it seems like, and I wouldn't even say Florida. Just considering how competitive the Atlantic is, I wouldn't say that they have that first spot locked up.
Right, absolutely.
They've got everybody in the Atlantic has a playoff spot locked up. It just depends where. And so whether it be Tampa, Toronto, or Boston, the Panthers, they're not safe.
You're absolutely right. To give you guys an idea who may not be looking at the standings at the moment, Columbus, who's currently in third, just out of that wild card spot, at 69 points right now, 66 games played. I believe the max they can get, if I've done my math right, is 101 points. So technically not eliminated right now, but Florida already at 94. They're getting close to being above that threshold. But Columbus would have a lot of ground to make up, even just to pass Washington, who's at 84 points. So they've got a pretty wide margin against everybody else. New York at 65. They obviously lost that game to the Lightning as well. So you're right. It looks like we know who's going to be in the playoffs from the Eastern Conference perspective. It is just a question of where are they going to end up. Matt, I'll ask you this go quickly, though. Do you care where the Lightning finish in the division? I know everybody always says, it doesn't matter, obviously, but I want to get your thoughts on if you think it matters whatsoever, even if it's just a little bit, at where the Lightning end up in the standings.
Well, didn't we finish third in our division last year, I think?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, I know the team, the actual team does not care. They just want a playoff spot. They'll take on anybody. They do not care. Ideally, I'd like to see them play Toronto. I think that would be a really fun series. We'll have to see how it shapes out, but I think that would probably be one of the more entertaining series, at least for an offensive, first round. It would suck if the Bolts collapsed and gave Toronto that first series win.
That's what scares me about Toronto.
I would hate to become another meme again. So, I don't know. I'll take anybody as long as it's not a wild card spot. I'll say that.
Well, and the thing is, too, almost no matter where you finish, you're going to get a tough team. As we mentioned, the Atlantic Division is one of the best in the NHL. Eastern Conference in general, it's going to be tough to get out of the Eastern Conference for anybody. It almost stinks for Florida, too. Your prize for winning the division is playing one of the really good Atlantic teams right now, which, heck, could even be the Lightning. So taking on the defending two-time Stanley Cup champions would not be fun for them. But again, as you mentioned, though, not even Florida safe for that top spot, and they do struggle on the road a lot more. But for me, the one thing I always said, I really wanted to get home ice against Florida just because I felt that, Florida is a lot better at home than they are on the road. They're still a very good team no matter what, but there was clearly a big stat differential when you look at their home and away stats. But again, as you mentioned, the Lightning have shown for the last couple of years now, it really doesn't matter if they have home ice advantage or not, because they've won it, and they won back-to-back Stanley Cups even when they were nowhere close to having home ice throughout the first couple of rounds, especially. Heck, they beat Carolina, who I believe had the higher seeding, if I remember correctly.
The President's Trophy winners, I believe.
I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but I think you might be right. Carolina was up there. I know that for a fact. So
and it was a decisive series too. It was
right.
Easy,
that was in 5 games.
Yeah.
Florida was one of the longest ones, was 6. That'll be a really fun series again. I know for a lot of NHL fans, I know people got a ton of fun out of that, and that'll probably go to 7 games if we have to face them again. So we'll see how it all plays out, though. There's a lot to determine. We've got still a decent amount of games left here in this. Well, we still got to finish off March here, but then last month of April before we are right back to the NHL playoffs. It's already almost here. Very excited. By the way, Matt, I don't know if you saw, did you see the NHL, the rebranding of the playoff logo?
Yeah, I saw that. They didn't really make a huge deal about it. I honestly can't remember what it looks like. I know they took a kind of minimalist approach to it.
It looks a lot like a
sleek.
banner. They tried to go for that.
Yeah.
All teams have that banner style. That's what it kind of looks like now.
Mm-hmm. Do you have
I think it's nice. I like it.
Yeah, I got nothing wrong with it. It's just, you've seen over the couple of years, a lot of corporations are going with that minimalist look, and this is just another victim to it.
Right. Yeah. You look back at some of those old, style logos, and they're crazy different looking ones, like especially with the NFL and what they used to do. And now it is kind of all the same and very slightly changes every year, but it'll be fun. We're looking forward to it. Quickly, before we get to our final thoughts here, I want to thank everybody for listening. Thank you guys for tuning in. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at RBLR Sports. Don't forget to check out all of our other podcasts. We got the Rays starting their season up very soon here. The Rowdies just got underway, I know, as well. So don't forget to check out all those other great podcasts too, as well, we have here on the channel. Also, if you guys could do us a big favor, if you're enjoying the content you're getting, be sure to hit that subscribe button or give us that 5-star rating, whatever platform you happen to be listening on. And don't forget to check out our store. We get tons of cool merch for each of the different teams in RBLR as well. And don't forget, if you use code BOLTS at checkout, you can get 10% off your order as well. So a cool little thing for you guys to get as well. But thank you for listening and checking us out here at RBLR. So, Matt, I'll go ahead and give you the final word, and we'll get out of here.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening. Do you have hold on quickly? Do you have a score prediction for the night? For tonight's game?
Good question. I think this will be a close game again. These are two really good teams. I'm going to go another 3-2 game, but this time it's the Lightning coming out on top.
I'm going to say 4-2.
4-2. I like it. Empty netter in there?
Oh, yeah. Take the over, baby.
I like it. All right, guys. Thank you for listening, and go Bolts.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.